All right, so here we are again at the Defensible Space Project that we have going on at the end of Marie and Leona Drive off Highland here in Hayward. As you can see, this has been a huge job. The crews have been out for only a week and a half and have started to make some real progress. They started on the Leona side and started working using their saws to limb branches up to 6 feet or higher as needed, and have worked this way. Already you can see that this home now has good defensible space. Once they remove all this slash that's here, there are going to be no fuel ladders, right? There are going to be no bushes directly below the tree canopy. There's going to be minimal light flashy fuels, and they're still going to have healthy trees that will provide them shade and habitat for the wildlife. As you move this way, you can see where the work continues to go. They've got their 100 feet of defensible space, and they've gotten to this point here where work is moving this direction. And just to show a little bit of a contrast as to what we're aiming for and what we're trying to fix, is look at this home here. The trees have grown right up to their deck. That is not what we want to see. If a fire were to start down here, look at all the fuel we've got. We've got the light flashy fuel into a dead down tree, into leaves and branches that are directly underneath and they're not limbed up properly, and then all the way right up. If it comes into the crown of this tree, it's going to burn right up alongside this deck, and this house would be in danger of catching fire if a wildfire were to come through here. When we come back at the end of this project, when this crew is done, it's going to look completely different. It's going to look nice, it's going to provide habitat, and it's going to provide 100 feet of defensible space and safety in this neighborhood. If the sight of somebody working with a chainsaw makes you nervous and you're thinking, I can't do that, there are a couple options that you have. Contractors are readily available to be able to do this kind of work. If you're a senior and you have economic impacts, you can apply for our resident assistance program, and we may be able to help you out there through grant funds. And it's also something that you don't need to do with a chainsaw. You can use hand saws, and tools like this pole saw are really handy to use to get up to some of the higher branches and make short work of pretty good sized branches. They're not hard to use. One thing to consider when limbing a tree on your property is the slope and a tree that's on a hillside. The general rule is you want to limb branches up to at least 6 feet. And what that's going to do is give a buffer from the ground to the trees so that we don't have any fire below reaching up into the trees and catching the crown of the tree on fire. If you'll notice on this side, I'm 6 feet tall. They've limbed up just about 6 feet, just over 6 feet on this side here. And that's going to be perfect. They've got one more branch that they did above it, but this is a 6 foot, roughly 6 foot high limbing. But as you step up the hill, this branch was also at about 6 feet high if you look from the base of the tree. However, with the slope rising, a branch coming off here would be about 3 feet high. So that's one thing to consider when limbing your trees up on your property. As the slope rises, you have to go up a little bit higher on the uphill side. These smaller branches, these are the ones that have a much more surface area that, if exposed to fire, would ignite very rapidly and pose the most danger in a wildfire setting. So this is the size of material that you want to make sure you get up off the ground and into the chipper and disposed of. so that it does not cause any future fire hazard. The other thing to consider is large branches like this. If you can move them away from your building, this is what we would consider a 100-hour fuel. It does not have a lot of flammable area and surface area that would ignite very easily at all. And 100-hour fuel means it would take 100 hours to burn a branch this big. A quick moving fire through this area would not ignite this, and this does not pose on itself, if it was left here on its own, does not pose a great threat, and in fact can enhance habitat for wildlife. The key here is you want to keep it spread out, and you want to make sure they're only the bigger size logs. Down the road, many years later, when it starts to rot and get soft, now it's going to be much more flammable, and that's when you would have to go and smash it and turn it into mulch. You may wonder about these leaves. Are the leaves flammable? Yes, but flame length is going to be dependent upon how high the fuel is. If these were to catch fire, you would have a slow burning, smoldering fire that is very easy for us to contain and will not be moving fast and endangering homes or lives. Over here, if you had a whole field full of weeds this tall and fuels this tall, your flame length will probably be, as a 3-foot high grass, your flame length would be at least 6 feet tall in a fast moving fire. And that's why it is so important to keep the light flashy fuels down, keep brush away from under the canopy of trees, and to limb the trees up. So if you want to take an overall look at this landscape that I'm standing in right now, the ladder fuel that I've talked about before is non-existent right now. There are no big bushes underneath the tree canopy, and all the limbs have been brought up to at least 6 feet high, and in this case, much higher than that. If you were to look and imagine now somehow a fire were to start here, there would be very little for it to burn, and it wouldn't have anywhere to go. One last thing I do want to get across to everybody is this does not have to be done in one day. This is something that you can have as an ongoing project, right? Start on one side of your yard and work a little bit each weekend until you get to that point where it's done. And then it's a matter of maintenance sporadically as it is needed, right? The upkeep will be much easier than doing the whole heavy lifting at one time. So don't be discouraged and think, like, looking out at your site saying, oh my gosh, I don't even know where to start. Pick a place, start with getting some of the big limbs down, weed eating, and then making sure that you don't have that fuel ladder in your house. And always start around your house and work out in concentric circles to get away, right? To give you that 100 feet of defensible space. So here we are. That's where we are after a week and a half of hard work by the crew on the scene. We're estimating that it's going to take about 3 weeks total. So in another 2 weeks, we'll be back out here and we'll do some filming and we'll have the completed project to show you. And we'll have a really good example for you to use when you're planning your work for your defensible space on your property. Thank you.